I'm supposed to wear myself out for the team? What team? No. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look out for myself, and I'm going to get mine.
Welcome back to the KP Show. My name is Kyle Posey. I write for boltsfromtheblue.com. Today, we will be going over offensive linemen, so offensive tackles, guards, centers. We're going to be debunking some myths. And I'm joined by Duke Mayweather. Duke, what's going on?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me, Kyle. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. You know, just getting off work, about to enjoy the weekend. But I want to, before we get into that, man, I want to talk some football. And I think I got the right guy here. So, Duke, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was fortunate enough to play college football at a Division II school, Humboldt State University. Played offensive line there. Went on to have a brief stint in the Arena 2 Football League, which I was very thankful for. And immediately got right into coaching. As soon as I was released from the Arena League, I had a coaching gig lined up, and I took my first college coaching gig, as an offensive line coach, where I was the run game coordinator and offensive line coach for 3 years. Directly during the same time I did that, I was also a strength and conditioning coach at Humboldt State University, which is my alma mater. So I kind of doubled up. I worked at the junior college level as an offensive line coach, then doubled up as a strength coach kind of there in the morning. I was then granted the opportunity to coach defensive line at Humboldt State University. I'm still maintaining my hat as an assistant strength coach. So I was able to do that. Did that for 3 years as well. So altogether, ended up being 6 years as a strength and conditioning coach at the college level, and 6 years coaching, 3 years offensive line, 3 years defensive line. Breaking down the draft, evaluating development of offensive linemen has always been a passion of mine. I've always felt that it was done wrong. Always felt it was handled wrong. It really grew into a passion. My passion through social media and through different outlets allowed me to garnish some attention from some pretty well-known names, which landed me my next gig as when I was the director of player personnel and performance coach for O-line performance, ran by Charles Bentley. Very fortunate for my time there. The things that I learned from Charles and just the players that we worked with is invaluable, unmatched. He runs class and very, 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 very fine-tuned machine as far as a business and also getting guys better. I was able to garnish respect and credibility amongst personnel around the league and also players around the league, which kind of leads me into what I do now, which is performance consulting specifically for offensive linemen. And pretty much my job is to know every college, every NFL prospect, what they're good at, what they're not good at, how does that work from a performance angle, as far as skill set, how it can translate into a training angle, as far as how can we get these guys better, and ultimately kind of a pattern of development from that point on. So it's kind of been what I've done professionally up to this point is kind of a mesh altogether, between coaching, development, strength and conditioning, training, is now, really being in a consulting role. So it's pretty cool, man.
That's awesome, man. And it sounds like you're super tight in. And I just think that, being around the game as much as possible, it really helps you learn and learn. So I can only imagine the kind of things you learned from Charles. I know, I've just coached a lot. Last year was my first year coaching, and I'm doing like receivers, quarterbacks, and DBs. So just even being around offensive line coaches and kind of picking their brain, I've learned more about offensive line in like the last six months to a year, I could ever imagine. So I can only imagine what but yeah, man.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about what specifically do you look for in a lineman? Are you do you gravitate more to the, athletic types who, have the kind of explosion and power that just jump off the screen? Or are you more of the methodical, hand technique, get to their spots, even though they might not be the most athletic type of. So what is your type of offensive lineman, first off?
First of all, I don't have a type. And that's one of the things where, teams will have a type. And because teams tend to have their type, a lot of times they typecast in the ability to get a guy that actually work for them, because they've got this vision of, oh, this is our type of guy. And, reality, potentially it couldn't be. One of the big things that I always say is, once the height and the weight is verified, once we really check off that athletic box, can the guy bend, athleticism, all the standard things, how his feet, we got to look at his performance. Can he play offensive line? That's one of the big things. And I think you start from the ground up, you really look at, how a guy is even engaged in his stance. I look at how a guy, his foot, as far as his up foot, if he's leaning towards, and if he's in a right-hand stance, is he leaning towards his right side too much, or is he balanced, back engaged, core engaged? How's his back foot? Is his back foot in a neutral position? Is his back foot turned to a 45-degree angle? I look at all these things because what it'll do, it'll send off signals to you when all of a sudden you see a guy can't reach block, a wide technique. And all of a sudden you say, well, why can't this guy reach block a wide technique? And the easy answer is he doesn't have the feet or quickness to do it. All right. What I look for is, okay, this guy's back foot is in neutral. Okay. So now he has to waste another movement, opening that hip, all right, stepping underneath himself or reach blocking, all right, to even get to his spot. Versus if you look at a guy who has it all figured out already, his foot is at a 45-degree angle. All he's doing is he's driving off the opposite foot. That hip is already open. He can target with his eyes and get there in a quick second. So that being said, to make a long story short, I'm looking for efficiency in footwork. Granted, a guy has to have a level of foot quickness and athleticism, but I think that's valued too much. A guy can move his feet fast as he wants to, but if he's not moving efficiently, he's not going to be able to make and sustain a block. So that's kind of key in that aspect. What we're looking for, we're moving. I say we're going to move from the ground up. So if we move up just a little bit, I'm looking for a hip explosion. I'm looking at once the guy gets off the ball, okay, is he able to hit, lift, and drive a defender and really get that hip roll where he can work to a finish and maintain a base? I'm looking at that big time. Okay. As far as offensive lineman, I'm looking at if he's got a base block, where are his hands at? All right. Is he getting thumbs up, tight hand carriage, lift, drive, torquing the elbows to create leverage, really driving through? That's something you got to pay attention to. If we're looking for a reach block, is his hands following his feet? All right. Always come up with a little term, hands follow feet, so you can cheat. It's not really cheating. It's really getting the hands to where they need to be. So on those reach blocks or cutoff blocks, is he being able to throw that back shoulder to end up midline, getting that far hand to that far side chest? Very key to look at in pass pro. If he's a guard, okay, is he able to use independent hand usage? Okay, is he able to, when need be, time up his punch, have great punch timing, great strike zone recognition? That's the distance between you, defender, and when you know where you get a solid punch to stop his charge and eventually lock him up to torque the elbows. It's kind of the same at center as far as what they're going to do with the hands as well. And as far as tackle, it's a little different in return. You don't want every tackle to play with independent hand usage. I mean, that can make them short in the corner, get their hands trapped, get hands swiped. So you're looking more or less for offensive tackle to keep half-man alignment and be able to really build his house, punch, and anchor, whether it be, as far as a heavy-duty punch that is stopping the guy's charge, or whether he's really torquing the elbows, controlling, and being able to lift and create leverage with his hands. As far as the stances will vary between centers, guards, and tackles. For the centers, you want to make sure that, that they're always in a position where they're going to be able to not so much roll out of their stance, but explode out of their stance because of the nature of what they have to do as far as snapping and stepping, whether it be a reach block, okay, whether it be a cutoff block, whether it be a base block, whether it be a pass set. That's really becomes a difficulty for a center. And so because of that, you've got to really pay attention to how they're lined up. A lot of times what you'll see, especially from the center, is ideally his feet should either be either track his knees. Sorry, his feet should ideally track or be outside of his knees. Okay, if his feet are inside his knees, pretty much it's going to make the center roll onto the outside of his ankles. He won't be able to really maintain his insteps and drive. He won't be able to really take an efficient pass set without backing up onto his heels. So really pay attention that the knees are in, the feet are out. Really allows him to set his base. As far as tackles and guards, we kind of talked about that. Really want to make sure that that foot is to a 45. That way they can set and build their house, that they can reach in either direction, cut off in either direction. So that's some of the things I'm looking for as far as from the ground up, as far as the stance and the mechanics aspect of it. Now, when you look into the temperament, you want to look at a guy that is competing every play, that competitive edge, that competitive advantage, not taking any crap from anybody, a guy that has good body language. There's so many guys that I see flash on film, and you're like, oh, that looked good for 2 plays, and all of a sudden that looked bad for a play. And you kind of rewind the film, and you look in between plays, you look at their body language. Okay, then you kind of look at them on the sideline, you follow them, and you're like, okay. So that kind of raises a red flag in my head. A lot of times physical decorum can tell you a lot about a player and his consistency issues or confidence issues. So I definitely look at physical decorum. Again, I definitely look at his ability to keep the composure, but yet play with the edge, right up to that edge, be filthy, be nasty, finishing every play. And finishing every play isn't always, a knockdown or a pancake, but it's giving that defender an extra, let him know that you're going to be there all day, that you're coming after him. So those are some of the things I kind of look for, to not get too technical without, really having a film cut up right here that I can point and say this, that. I try to do that through social media a lot, with specific clips of highlighting points that guys are really good at, and as far as efficiency and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think you do a really good job that if anybody's out there that doesn't follow Duke, go to his Twitter handle is Big Duke 50 at Big Duke 50. So check him out. He does a really good job of just, illustrating, using good examples like he's explaining right now. So, I think you hit on some really good core points that you look for, because oftentimes, people confuse lack of athleticism equals because they're not an efficient player, or the hip explosion thing. As you're mentioning some of these things, guys are popping into my head. We're going to talk about these guys, and I'd be interested to see if we're seeing the same things when it comes to efficient players, guys that snap their hips, guys that have poor punch timing, good independent hand use. So all these are very important. But how about just kind of moving on here? Let's kind of debunk some of these rumors of there's a tackle. So
yeah,
let's use a popular example so La'el Collins right now.
Absolutely.
For a while, a lot of people were pegging him as a guard, and some teams and some people that are evaluating still view Collins as a guard. I tend to think that just because you're getting beat one way, or just because a defender crosses your face, doesn't mean that you can't do this, or you automatically have to go inside to guard. So how about you tell us why, because a tackle can't do this, he's a guard? Tell us why that's not true.
That's not true, because a lot of times the way offensive tackles get beat can vary. A lot of times guys have difficulty on the edge transitioning an anchor from a speed to power rusher, where they can't anchor, they get beat to the inside a lot because they drop their post foot. A lot of times they'll shorten the corner and open up their hips right away and miss with their hands, all that tackle. And so automatically guys say, man, he's a guard. The reason why that's not true is because, for all the reasons that I just mentioned, if a guy can't establish and maintain his post foot at guard, there's going to be some serious issues. Okay. You've got to be able to establish that post foot and kind of be a wall at guard to create that width. All right. That is number one. Okay. Number two is if a guy is missing with his hands at guard as well, especially say if he has a jump set, he's missing with his hands. He's playing against a guy who has very active hands, like say J.J. Watt is down in a 3 shade or even a 4-eye coming on a slant, and he swipes hands down. You miss with him. Guess what? MRI second opinion for your quarterback. So. I think that's a lot of the reason guys automatically get labeled as offensive guards that have played tackle if they struggle in pass pro a little bit. But you got to get back to the fundamentals, and you got to look at what really does project from the tackle position at guard. Okay, and that's kind of the key that nobody seems to really want to touch on, because I think a lot of times it's a cover up to say, all right, he's a guard. What I look for a tackle that can play guard is does he win in a phone booth at tackle? Okay, and what I mean by that is, does he do the things that would qualify as a guard? Jump setting, throwing hands, independent hand usage, mauling people off the ball, being able to reach within his first 2 or 3 steps and not only flatten the guy out but get drive up the field. Is he able to with a wide edge rusher, not only trace the circle, which most tackles do when a guy's running the hoop, but able to walk the guy up the field and widen him. Okay, those are very important components that can be very useful at guard. If you see a tackle that can do that, which Lyle can do, then yes, he can have some success at guard and be a very good guard. But at the same time, you got a guy like Lyle who, on an island, he holds his own. Okay, the physicality that he brings, the toughness that he brings, and when you watch his film, people have said you get bored with his film, which is a great thing at offensive tackle. I mean, he's just very steady, very consistent, which is why I say he's my number one offensive tackle out there. So as far as you got, a skill set has to definitely project into the interior and not per se, he's having issues, he's a guard. Okay. A guy like Sheriff, same thing. When he wins in the phone booth. Okay. He's able to jump set, he's able to throw hands, things of that nature. His limiting ability is his lower body mobility. He doesn't really kick to get to a spot and stick it, okay, with his feet. He kind of rolls and kind of kick plops, and has to really chop his feet to redirect, which isn't a bad thing, but it better suits him to play guard because of the things he can do in the run game, because of how he can win in pass protection. Do I think he could play right tackle in the right situation? Absolutely. But I think he projects best as being probably the top-rated guard in this draft.
So back to Collins real quick, because I think people think that, we'll go back to the efficiency thing. People think that he's not efficient, like his lower body isn't efficient. But when I watch Collins, I didn't really see him get beat to the edge at all. Like, I think he has very good feet. Like, I don't see that issue at all. I think maybe his issues from what I saw is, defenders would disengage, like he would fall off blocks, like they would fall off blocks from him. Yeah. But I definitely didn't see, him getting beat to the edge. And that's what usually is the automatic, he's got to go into guard because he has, difficulties with edge or speed off the edge. But I don't think that's an issue at all. So I would definitely leave Collins on the edge. Like I said, just falling off blocks, maybe lunging a little bit when he gets to the second level, but none of this speed edge or phone booth concerns at all. So
no, not at all. And I think you're 100% right about that. When you look at Lyle, he's able to explode out of his stance, kick and get to a spot, build his house, and he maintains half-man relationship, which allows me to make the judgment that no, he doesn't have problems with edge rushers. You hit the nail on the head when you say that he does fall off blocks. It's something that I've actually talked to people who are involved with Lyle about. His core strength, I should say core mobility, and lower back strength. It could definitely fix that as far as falling off blocks and not being what people would generally say top heavy. Is not really a top heavy issue. It's more of the back extensors and erectors being developed. Some of the lats being developed as far as holding it up and punching some of the punching muscles. Just really able to have that posture, upper body, to when he gets into a guy, he doesn't fall off. It's about strengthening and staying engaged, and those are the areas where I think that he needs to improve as far as a training performance aspect that would allow him to have success, to maintain blocks and be able to really lock guys up.
So let's move on to your second ranked tackle, Jake Fisher from Oregon. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about him.
Absolutely. Jake Fisher's a guy that, coming into the season, I knew he was good. But as the season progressed, he was hurt a little bit. And then as it started to go on, I said, whoa, I think I saw him against Utah and then UCLA several times be able to reach guys within his first 2 or 3 steps and then drive him to the sideline. And what really caught my attention about him is he got holding calls on like 3 of those plays where, they were just ridiculous reaches where I'm like, oh, that popped. So I went back and really looked at the tape. A lot of people were saying that, he's robotic. I think a lot of people confuse efficiencies for robotic. A lot of people say, he doesn't have the feet, to play at tackle. Then I started to look, and all of a sudden I said, you know what? This kid has the best hands in the draft. In fact, this kid has the best hand usage period I've seen in a couple of years, man. I texted a couple of guys that I knew, a couple of current NFL players, a couple of, national media guys I talked to back and forth. And all of them, they kind of text me at the same time. They go, wow, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So what I see from Jake Fisher is a guy who has very efficient footwork, okay, very efficient mechanics, freaky athleticism. Because of his efficient footwork to put him in position, he's able to use his hands, and above average hand usage. I see him with winning 1-2 punch combos, independent hand usage with his offhand coming and swiping a hand down or hammering down. I see him double swiping hands out, really getting the fit in. I see him reworking hands for leverage and twerking elbows and run blocking. It's just his hand usage is above and beyond anything I've seen in the past couple of years. As far as his run blocking, really explodes out of the stance for a 6'6" guy. Really does play with low pad level, which is impressive. So not only does he leverage with his hands well, but he's also able to create leverage through playing low in his hips, able to roll his hips, and he plays with a nasty streak, man. Every chance that he gets, he's trying to make his presence known. And I find it comical that Oregon kind of gets the soft moniker because when you look at their offensive line, those guys get after it, man. You look at Jake Fisher against Florida State, Florida State was supposed to be, hit him in the mouth, be the toughest matchup ever. He came out putting guys in the ground. His first run play against Ohio State, he gave that DN and the edge rushers fits all night, man. So
that's what I was going to bring up. I was going to bring
absolutely.
up Ohio State. He had I just write this stuff down. He had 7 pancakes against Ohio State. He gave whoever 88 is, man.
Fits nightmares.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and even in pass pro, it looked like he was doing mirror drill with his hands locked in. He's just sitting there. There was a couple of times where his edge was challenged. But just the feet, maintaining contact with the ground, cutting grass, in steps, being able to anchor, torque, really, really showed me a lot. It was a beautiful thing to watch the mesh between his feet and also watch, his hands. Kyle, you there? Uh-oh. Kyle, you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. I think my connection went back.
Okay.
No, just just picking up with Jake Fisher, let's talk about some of his issues. So I think there were occasions where Fisher was on the ground a little too much. I think actually against Florida State, he was on the ground, I think 4 times, where I think he's just too athletic to be on the ground like that. So what are some other issues? I think, I'm trying to see here. I think there were some awareness issues. I saw that, sometimes when he went to down block, he didn't pick up the DT quick enough, or when he went to climb to the second level, he just wasn't aware of who to block. And so there's no like physical issues that I see with him, because I think he's very strong. I think he has very good hands. I think it's just more of a repetition type thing with Fisher. But what are some issues that would hold up with Fisher being successful in your eyes?
I don't see many issues as far as physical limitations or issues that can hold up success. What I do see is, again, like you said, some of his targeting on backside cutoffs and down blocks are a little off. He's shallow, which causes him to be to the front side shoulder instead of the backside shoulder, really get across guys. That could be fixed. It's all about eyes and landmarks a lot of times. And same thing with the second level. I did notice in the second level where a lot of times he would get to a spot and then he would literally turn in the circle, like, who do I have? Again, it's all about timing, flow, and landmarks in the NFL, especially depending on what scheme he ends up in. I think those things can be coached. As far as him being on the ground, I did see him fall off of a few blocks. I did see him, sifting through some things where he did end up, looking like he got sniped. But, talking to me and Dan Hatman are good friends, and, Dan's been around the NFL for a long time, very reputable, incredible front office guy and scout. And, one of the things that we kind of talked about is a lot of times guys get a bad rap for being on the ground. But if you really go back and look at the reason why guys are on the ground sometimes is if they're lunging for a block, really trying to get the piece of a guy, is he on the ground? Did he get friction or anything? What are the reasons? Because no matter how athletic you are, there are some things that happen on the football field, especially within that box 3 yards wide, 3 yards deep, that all of a sudden you're like, oh, what the hell just happened to me? So it's not too much of a concern for me as far as him really being on the ground. I didn't notice it hinder his play or impede any progress of a play either.
No, that's fair. And I think I definitely don't write it down every time they're on the ground, because I understand that you're going to get rolled up on, or, those plays happen, especially in the box with all those bodies around. So I'm not going to chart every time they are. So let's kind of go into this next guy here. You have very popular name, DJ Humphries, Florida, very athletic kid. What do you like so much about Humphries?
I'll tell you what, DJ Humphries is very, 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 very athletic. He's very, on film, very competitive by nature. I mean, the guy is able to – he has a very good punch, too. I mean, his hand usage can improve a bit. He's got to get a little more crafty. But as far as the upper body explosion and power that he possesses in his punch, whether it be pass block, whether it's jacking a guy, as far as getting leverage on the edge on a reach block, the guy brings power. He's got good hip explosion. Very good feet as far as efficiency. The thing that's impressive with him in pass pro is inside counter moves are a no-no. That guy maintains his post foot. Very strong with his inside hand. Is able to slam the door shut or add guys to the wall, or able to just yoke him up and really sit on the bull rush. One thing that I really did notice about him, too, is he has very good awareness to stand on the same level with his offensive guard, being able to pass off stunts, being able to mirror, bump, collision, and pass off any type of stunts, getting back out if it's a wide looper. Against LSU and against Kentucky, he really did cause a lot of those guys fits as far as, they tried to come with inside counter and come back with a spin. He's a guy that you really can't spin on. He maintains that half-man leverage. As soon as he sees you go to spin, he's going to punch your inside number and then take just a half a step where you're going to end up full man with him, and then he locks guys up. Definitely has the feet to trace the circle and run guys over the top of the pocket, run guys by. And, you know, just really is able to display his length and freak athletic ability. Some improvements that I do think he needs to work on is, you know, kind of on his combos, really working in unison, the same foot, same shoulder with the guard. Just his overall strength at the point of attack has grown, man. I think that will come. I think he needs to, you know, really garnish and polish functional strength from the ground up. Really, he has the hip explosion, but it's really, you know, that oomph that really needs to be able to, okay, if it's a stalemate, let's get this guy off the point. I think that needs to be improved upon. You know, and I think also the consistency of him going to the next level is something that really stuck out to me. I would see him combo off chip and really be in position to get off onto a linebacker. I really like that about him. There's a play in Tennessee that really stands out in my mind, that it was a play to his side. He was able to come down on a three technique, collapse him, and really melt it right onto the middle linebacker for a big gainer. So DJ Humphries is a guy that can do a lot of things, and he's a guy with a high ceiling, I think. You know, I'm really under the belief where I like a guy who, you know, can play, and I don't care about the ceiling too much. And the reason why I say that is not all guys get developed in the NFL. It really depends on what coach and what team you end up with. But the ceiling that Humphries has, paired with what he already possesses, is pretty darn intriguing, man. It's special to potentially, you know, him being, you know, could be the best in this class when it's all said and done. You know, you never know.
Well, that's a good point about how, you know, how you already see all the baseline traits you want to see right now, and you already know, or you can see that he can get so much better. So that is a good point. I think I actually have Humphries as as a 7th rated tackle. A lot of the things that you're saying is what I have written down. Like against LSU, I have mirrors well on the spin move. I also have didn't execute very well at the second level and doesn't lock on consistently. Did you watch Humphries against Georgia? I
have not watched him against Georgia.
That is one of the most Jekyll and Hyde performances that I've ever seen.
Really?
One play where he will lock on, he will snap his hips, and he'll just drive the defender 3-4 yards. And the very next play, he'll whiff. And there's literally 3 series in a row where every other play is like hot, plus minus. So, gotcha. I mean, the inconsistencies are real with Humphries, but like you said, you're just not gonna beat him in pass protection. Like if you want to go to the edge, it's just not gonna happen. If you want to maybe try to counter, it's just not gonna happen. So while I think he can be more aware, I think he can. I guess the issues at the second level was him. With the athleticism, there's no issue of him getting there. He can get to his spots. It's just, I think actually he overran some of his targets. That was an issue. So
he did. He overran his targets a lot, which to me is not really a concern.
It's more about getting under control, right?
Yeah, because what I'm looking for, especially when a guy going to college, is where is he ending up? Okay, and the reason why I say that is, the fact of the matter is the NFL is 2 steps faster than even the elite level D1 football. That's a fact. So a lot of times when you see offensive linemen taking good angles, but a chance over targeting at the second level, not necessarily a bad thing, especially for Humphries. Reason being is when you're coaching a guy up to climb to the second level, you're not coaching him to, all right, go to where the linebacker is. You're coaching him to have instincts of where he's going to end up at within 2 to 3 steps. Okay, so a lot of times guys don't conceptualize that, and they can end up too deep or too shallow. All depends. But again, he has the athletic ability to get to where he needs to be. It's all going to be landmarks for him at the point of where he gets into the offense he eventually settles into in the NFL.
Okay, so let's move on to this next guy. This next guy is who I have as the number 1 tackle, TJ Clemmings. This is one of the first tackles that I watched, or this is like I watched these guys. I watched Collins first, and I think Clemmings was one of the guys that you just like, wow.
Yeah, Clemmings is he's a bulldozer even at right tackle. I mean, just long, athletic, fast twitch guy. Can reach like a mofo, backside cut off like a mofo.
Yes.
You know, really good on his deuce blocks. The thing that really not concerned me, I think for him it can be developed. The thing that really needs to improve is his strike zone recognition and punch timing, the consistency of that. A lot of times he gets caught up with getting guys too close to him, and he can't exactly anchor, and he can't exactly create leverage. I don't care if a guy bench presses 600 or 700 pounds. If you got a guy into your frame that deep, you're not going to be able to lock him up. So just punch timing, some hand usage issues, and just consistency as far as his sets. I think he was very, consistent exploding into his set. I think he has some inconsistencies in getting to his spot and then able to build his house and anchor. There were some times where he kept kicking, and again, he got shoved in and really shortened the edge. So that was, some things that I said, okay, he really does need to improve on that. And those are actually two things that may take a little time to develop, is consistency in sets, and also really that punch time and strike zone recognition. It's not something that you're going to say, all right, I'm going to go to camp, fix this, and be good. It's one of those things that really has to be developed. One of the big things that I really see from Clemmings that I like, and I think I said this earlier in the season, and I said this even earlier today, the things that he possesses at right tackle are all traits that will make him, I think, eventually a very good left tackle. Okay, so he's playing right tackle now, but his skill set and his athletic ability and his range, he has very similar movement patterns to Tyron Smith in some regards, and I think definitely his home is going to eventually be at left tackle. I think he's just too rangy, but at the same time, very gifted to I don't want to say to stay on the right side like it's a downgrade, but I think those are the type of guys that get paid the big bucks, what he possesses over on the left side.
Yeah, I'm just nodding along here because I like, not to go into too much like hyperbole, but the Tyron Smith is exactly what I was thinking of when you see the movements. And I understand that, he has these issues in, pass protection. Like some of the times when he was getting beat, he just wouldn't move his feet. But we're talking about a guy who coming off of playing defensive tackle all his life, and this is the second year. And not to mention he's in college doing this for what, 2 hours a night?
Yeah.
So once you get real repetitions for like a few months at a time, I think we're going to see a lot of improvement. And I do think
Absolutely.
he's very good early on. I think his initial punch when he does get his hands on you is filthy, right? Like he gets insane amount of movement. Like you said, his range, like I don't think he has any issues reaching or climbing to the next level. There's little footwork issues in the run game too. You would like to see him, gain more depth. But like I said, when he knows, or like when he's practicing full time at this, and when he has somebody who actually knows what they're talking about telling him what to do, I think you're just going to see him explode as a player and just be so much better than what you already see. So like basically as you see Humphreys right now, I'm projecting, which might be unfair, but I'm projecting Clemmings, and that's why I think he's my number one, because he has all the traits you look for, and already he's not getting beat. Like there are guys who've been playing forever and they're making mistakes, or they're giving up sacks, or they're giving up spin moves or rips to the outside, and it just doesn't happen consistently enough for me to be worried about Clemmings. I don't know. I'm very, very high. Probably too high, but I'm fine with that. I'll go down swing with Clemmings.
I'll tell you what, those top, 3 to 4 guys, I'm not arguing with anybody who has either one of those 4 guys as their number one tackle. Those guys, in my opinion, it's all ice cream. Depending on what flavor you like, it's all sweet and it's all good. You know, it's all ice cream at that point with those top 4 guys. I really do believe that. I do believe that there is separation between, you know, when you start to talk about your Petes and your Ogabuis and you know, some of your Flowers and guys like that. But you know, I can't disagree with you, my man.
Let's get into Pete here. So I have Pete as my number 4. I think you have 5th, right?
I have him as 5th.
So what are some, because Pete, I mean, he's been like, he's supposed to be the guy. A lot of the big draft, big media has him penciled in as a top 10 guy, which is probably going to happen. And I mean, his name's been popular, so he's supposed to be this player. So what are some of the characteristics or traits that make Pete such an intriguing prospect, or, you know, that make you want to say, yes, like, this is who I want on my squad?
Well, I mean, he's a 6'7", 320-pound guy with very nimble feet. He has, I'm going to say, elite recoverability. And what I mean by that is there's times where guys have spun on him and he's able to really, you know, drop his anchor, or he's able to really shuffle his feet back over and mirror. His change of direction, agility, and his recoverability is very impressive for a guy with his size and mass. I mean, there's guys who are 6'7", 315, 320 that are very ectomorphic in terms of you know, long levers and things of that nature. You know, very meso. I mean, Pete is a big body guy. I mean, huge legs, huge upper body. I think he will continue to need to, you know, change body composition and put on lean muscle mass, as far as, you know, really switching over some, what some people say, body fat. But I mean, the kid, what he possesses for a guy that big, as far as footwork, being able to recover, being able to explode out of his stance, get to his spot, his length. He shows the ability to be able to trace the circle when guys run the hoop, widen guys. You know, it's pretty darn impressive. What kind of sets him apart, you know, to me, is being in that top 5, you know, top 6, top 4 range, though, is that he's a very physical guy at the point of attack. Physical into regards where it has gotten him in some trouble as far as penalties and issues like that. I can live with a guy, you know, getting personal fouls for physicality. I can't live with pre-snap and, you know, stupid penalties. But Pete definitely garnished his share of, you know, penalties stemming from, you know, either a hands to the face or, you know, just really mauling a guy, and they called, you know, unnecessary roughness and things of that nature. But I can live with that. Some things that I think he needs to continue to get better on is, again, he's another guy that I see at times will narrow his base. He does fall off blocks and can get a little sloppy at times. It looks like to me that sometimes he becomes fatigued in the course of the game. You'll see his pad level tend to raise. You'll also see him to tend to not exactly explode off the ball, but kind of roll off the ball. But again, I mean, that's one of the things why I mentioned that, you know, body composition is going to be important for him. It's all fine and dandy to keep your weight down to 313 during this time of year. You know, you're doing the visits, you've got the combine, you got the Senior Bowl, or for his case, he didn't do the Senior Bowl, but you've got the combine. You know what weight you need to be at. But it's going to be next year, in the middle of the season, where there's no accountability. It's your rookie year. You're getting beat up. Are you going to get to 330, 340 and not be able to move, or what? You know, and that's really the thing that I think he needs to continue to keep his body weight down and recomposition the body. Heavier is not always better on the offensive line. And again, I think just consistency as far as maintaining blocks is going to be a key for him.
My thing with Pete is, it's, you know how we project Humphreys and Clemmings in a positive way. My issues are projecting Pete in a negative way, because like he has like plus, he has woe feet basically. Like there's no way he should be recovering like that. There's no way he should be able to, you know, just cut off the edge rusher how he just did, but he did. So my thought process when watching Pete is like, how do I know that that's going to work in the NFL? Like, how do I know when he's lined up against Justin Houston, and Justin Houston beats him, he's going to be able to recover like he did against whoever this Notre Dame rusher is. But I don't know. I do have that.
Well, one of the big things that you need to look at is, again, it goes back to the start of our conversation we had here, is efficiency and consistency. He's very efficient with his feet, his lateral movement as far as mirroring and adjusting. I see him using a feather technique sometimes, and what that means is if a guy really challenges his edge to work through his post foot, he'll switch his post foot. He does that very well. That's something that natural that not many coaches teach. There are about a handful of coaches that teach that. There's not many players that can execute it. They're not coordinated enough to do it, but he does it naturally. Okay, he does it very naturally, and that allows him to recover. There's a guy by the name of Jonathan Ogden that also did that very naturally. I'm not comparing the two at all. But it just, when I go back and look at film, that's one of the things that I noticed J.O. Really did well as and he did it at a consistent rate. That's one thing I do see Pete do is, again, what he does and what he does good, he does it consistently. That consistency as a team and as a coach brings me comfort, when I'm bringing a guy into my locker room to know that, hey, this guy's this is what you're gonna get, As far as the negative projection of where he may end up, if that was the case, we can have negative projections about everybody, we could say, Jake Fisher has outstanding hands and feet now, but I mean, what about when guys are, that much quicker, he's not in position to have his hands? Or, what if Lyle doesn't show the same physicality at the point of attack, or, just in his everyday approach, because, he's a little intimidated, or he's playing a little slower because of the NFL, so you can't really go on it say what if. I mean, granted, that is the business, but at the same time, that could be applied to every single prospect,
That's fair. That's fair. My thing is, because you do see it, so I do see this so often. Like, I see him, like, quote unquote, getting beat, but he's not getting beat, so he can recover, even though it looks like maybe he's bending at the waist, but the quarterback's clean, so there's nothing that
Absolutely.
there's nothing to be mad at. I see him allowing rushers to get inside of it, like in his body, but I also see him absorbing the contact, so I know he's strong enough to do that. So I mean, all the traits that that when you watch Pete, you think like, oh, like he has to be good. There's nothing. He's not getting beat. Guys aren't getting by him. They're not bull rushing him, but he does. I don't know. There's something there. Whether it's the lunging, whether it's guys getting into him, that causes me for concern. But
yeah, the thing that is a little concerning is he does allow guys into his frame more than I would like to see. And in the NFL, that'll get you beat. That'll get you push pull. That'll get you speed to power. That'll get you long arm to a quick swim or hub. So that is an area that he needs to get cleaned up. And again, that's going to take development.
So let's wrap up these tackles here. I know there's a ton of tackles, and
absolutely
tackle class. Let's kind of group these guys together. So how about I throw out some of the traits you said earlier, and you just hit me with who's the best and who's the worst. So who's the most efficient tackle?
Most efficient tackle, in my opinion, is Jake Fisher. I mean, as far as hands, feet, and just his overall body control. In line as a run blocker, and also as a pass blocker. Just very, very, very efficient.
Who's the least efficient tackler? And it doesn't have to be just the few that we talked about.
The least efficient tackle is definitely Eric Flowers. Eric Flowers wastes so much movement in his kick. He wastes so much, movement with his hand motions. A lot of times he looks like he's a running airplane. He's a guy with a ton of potential and upside, but he's definitely, definitely is probably least efficient, almost probably in that whole class.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about Flowers is like he's really good. Like he's really strong too. So like you see in the run game, he's a dog. Like he's powerful. He can create holes. But when they go back to drop, when they go back to pass, man, oh my God, like you just see so much clunkiness, so much.
Well, for me, I see him as being a strong guy. And like I always tell people, when I used to coach on field, I would say this is strong. Being able to move guys,
Yeah.
be able to bench guys, this is strong. But being able to throw your hips, roll your hips, be able to stick, drop your anchor, sit on the guy, really, be stingy giving ground. That's being powerful, explosive, and having functional strength. I don't think that Flowers has tapped into that functional strength yet. He's strong as hell, but as far as his power output and explosion, hasn't quite uncoiled that yet. And I think that's going to be that is what's concerning to me about him is that's not something that can just roll into camp and fix. I mean, you've got to get with the right people around you. And I'm not just talking about team. I'm talking about in the off season. You that has to be something that's an ongoing area of focus to improve. Things like improving mobility overall, things like explosive transfer exercises, Olympic lifts. For a guy like him, it'll probably be snatches and power pulls and things of that nature. Those are things where he's really got to drop his hips and really work the triple extension through his training. That way it translates onto the field. Because if not, you can end up with a guy, and I hate comparing players, but when I watch his film and I see the tools that he possesses, the thing that goes off into my head is this guy can be a very high pick, and he could have a very high ceiling and be very good, or he could be Matt Khalil at this point.
Oh
And
no. Oh no.
and again, I don't like comparing players, but when you look at the athleticism, if you look at what everybody talked about with Matt Khalil, there were those things, man, he's so strong, but he can run. He's so athletic. Oh my God, look at him. Oh, but at the end of the day, if you don't work on that technique, if you don't work on the craft, and then you have those baseline issues of, the strength of power and explosive output as far as able to use it and uncoil, you've got an uphill battle, man. And all it takes is, a season of dings, one minor or a major injury where you lose that step of athleticism or quickness, and you really got to fall back onto your skill set and technique and what you've done. And if that hasn't been developed at any point, if you don't have that functional strength that you possessed, it could be bad news, my man.
Yeah, no, I think we see a lot of the same things with Flowers. We actually both have him as our number 8 rated tackle. I'd be interested to see if he can get these kind of pass pro technique issues worked out. But I don't know if I'd want to be the one who would have to work those out. I don't know if I'd be patient enough, and I don't know if I want my quarterback to be the one
Experimenting with.
exactly.
Yeah,
So let's go to the next trait you mentioned early on here. What offensive tackle has the best hip explosion?
Best hip explosion from offensive tackle. I'm going to have to say it's DJ Humphries. Between DJ Humphries and TJ Clemmings, both of those guys, you see them just kind of tightly wound, and then all of a sudden you see that hip, boom, just explode and really get lift and drive off of guys.
Yep, and that's where you see the defender's head jolt back and
absolutely
driving back 2 to 3
absolutely.
yards. So we touched on both of those guys. So how about the least, the least consistent hip explosion?
The least consistent in hip explosion. Does it have to be guys that we talked about?
No, it can be any of the guys. So I mean,
probably Rob Havenstein is probably the least consistent in hip explosion. Havenstein is a guy that, in my opinion, he could play football. I mean, he's not going to wow you with his workouts. He's not going to wow you how he looks. Doesn't really, but I mean, just feet, hands, eyes, always in the right position. He kind of reminds me of Jess Schwartz, who's a really good buddy of mine. But just a guy who is efficient and understands how to play the game. You could tell when a guy just gets it, like he understands. Havenstein looks like a guy that understands and gets it. But in just the hip explosion is lacking there.
Well, I guess it makes sense because we're talking about the two guys who you mentioned are probably two of the better athletes at the position, and Havenson isn't known for being the greatest athlete,
No,
even though
absolutely.
so I guess that does kind of make sense. I would say, I mean, I wouldn't say it's lack of hip explosion, but another thing about Pete, real quick, is that I thought he could have generated a lot more power given the way how he absorbs contact. I think he could have generated contact much better. What do you think about that?
That's very fair to say. There was a lot of times where I would see him try to muscle instead of explode. You would see him, he would get to a point, and instead of hit, lift, and drive, he's sitting there grabbing and really try to muscle a guy out the way. A lot of times there were times where I thought he could have blew things open as far as like on a down block or even at a base block, and he tried to muscle a guy instead of really getting under his pads and dipping and exploding the hips. So I definitely understand and see where you're coming from with making that assessment.
So you said Jake Fisher has the best hand usage about offensive tackles. Who would you say has the least?
Probably Eric Flowers again. His hands are all over the place. Just in everything you really see. He misses with his hands a lot. A lot of times his hands are outside the frame. He is able to recover a bit with them, but I think his hands are another area of improvement that he needs to work on.
No, that's fair. I mean, we don't have to touch on that too much because we just kind of dog Flowers.
I mean, the guy's got unreal potential, though. I mean, he can really he has the potential to be really, really good if he lands in the right spot and really do the things necessary to become a pro.
So, how about who do you think has the best punch timing? Because that's very important for pass rush, especially in a pass-happy league.
Yeah, absolutely. The best punch timing amongst the tackles, I'm going to say Lyle has very good punch timing. He kind of just understands his distance and strike zone. And also DJ Humphries has very good punch timing and strike zone recognition, really able to jolt guys back. Another guy that I like his punch timing and just the physicality and heaviness of his hands is Mitch Morsey from Missouri. Very good punch timing, very good tight hand carriage, very strong and powerful upper body explosion.
So, and how about the least, like the worst punch timing? This is a pretty popular name that has been thrown around, but I'd like to see where you go with this one.
Least punch timing. There's a lot of guys that fall into that. I mean, just watching the tape, I do see, again, like I said, Clemens is very inconsistent with his punch timing and strike zone at times. Of course, we just talked about Flowers. The kid from Texas A&M, Ogubui, is very, very inconsistent with punch timing. I've seen the guy punch and really his hands get pushed right back to him. So that lets me know that he punched too soon. It also let me know that a lot of times he allowed the defender to really gain control. But, yeah, between those three names, I would say Ogubui probably is the one who probably has the worst punch timing at this point.
Yep, and that's why I said he's a popular name, and we haven't touched on him yet. But Ogubui, I don't even know if that's how you say his name, but
I think it's Ogubui.
There's examples there's probably 3 or 4 examples in every game with him where the defensive lineman, where he's getting to his pass set, he's where he needs to be, and when he's going to shoot his hands, he's probably like a full second late. Yeah. He's either a full second late or early, so the defender can get his hands on him and kind of walk him back.
Yeah, absolutely.
That he has to get fixed. If he doesn't get that fixed, he's not going to be in the NFL for very long. I know it's an issue that Eric Fisher had, and we're still kind of seeing the same thing. But man, he's really, really talented. And the thing is, he's not weak. I know he's not weak because I've seen him get movement. But it's an issue that has to be fixed. And we're talking about a guy whose athleticism rivals Humphreys and Clemmings. Like he has really good feet, but I mean, if you don't have good punch timing, it's just gonna be a long day for your quarterback.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What really set, and that's the thing why I have him ranked, even below Pete, is what really set both of those guys apart for me was Pete's physicality at the point of attack, just overall physicality as a whole, and then really able to lay hands and lock guys up when need be. I don't see that from Ogilvy. I definitely, there's times where I'm like, oh, that was a little soft, and I don't like calling guys soft because I think it's an attack on them. But I mean, there's plays where he plays very soft and finesse, and that's fine if you're a technical dog, But when you're out there scrapping and surviving, especially, I mean, you're playing South Carolina, you're playing Ole Miss, and you're out there. It's just not. It just can't get it done. I mean, there was a few plays where I looked. I'm like, man, if he would have came up with just a little more, that could have sprung. And again, I just didn't see that from him. So that is kind of an area of concern with him.
Yeah, I'm glad you said dog. That's what you want on both sides of the ball in the trench. You want a dog.
Absolutely.
You want a guy that's going to finish. And if you question a guy's physicality, or if you have to worry about calling him soft, I mean, that should be a red flag right there. But let's talk about who's the one tackle. Okay, who's the tackle that we haven't talked about that is your favorite guy to watch? Who's your favorite tackle to watch that's not like a top guy that we haven't mentioned?
I'll just rattle off three of them real quick. I like Mitch Morrissey, which we did actually mention. But Ty Sambrello's a guy that I really like from Colorado State. He's a guy who's physical at the point of attack, very good in the run game, does fall off blocks a little bit. But, I mean, I think he could be a very good right tackle in the NFL. Also, again, we talked about Mitch Morrissey and what he brings as far as physicality, not only with his punch, but in the run game, consistently gets to a spot, shows explosion, good pad level. I liked him better than Justin Britt last year when they played together, and I think ultimately Morrissey is a starting right tackle in the NFL. And then the guy that nobody really has talked about, and, I mean, who knows where he might end up, is Silverman from Boston College. He's a guy that I think has a lot of athletic potential upside. He's a 6'5", like 295-pound guy that moves his feet really well, very long, very good in pass protection, can reach, can cut off, climb to the next level, very physical, but haven't heard much about him as far as, any type of buzz. But he's a guy that all of a sudden he may jump onto the scene and be a backup, and then eventually, who knows? But he's a guy that I actually enjoyed watching on film and thought, wow, this guy can do some things. And then Rob Havenstein, guy that, again, he just gets it. I mean, you see him on zone blocking, reaching, being able to widen guys and even hook guys, backside cutoff, kick it to a spot, being able to anchor, build his house. When working combos, really gets lift on the combo, able to shove guys in, overtake, or come off, depending on what side of the combo he's on. So he's a guy that has starting right tackle qualities and ability that is kind of not really decorated much.
Yeah, Havenstein is a guy that he's a learning point. He just gets the job done. He just does his job. He's a guy that you can rely on. It's not pretty, but he's going to keep your quarterback clean. And there's a reason Wisconsin ran to the right so often, and Gordon had those big holes, and he had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. I was able to see him play live against Arizona State in person. And so, it was definitely, I had my eyes glued on him when they were on offense, and then, Jamil Douglas when they were on, when Arizona State was on offense. So definitely.
With you mentioned Colorado State Sambrello, I have concerns about him. I think I rated him in the low third, maybe high fourth. I think it was low third, but I don't think he can redirect and I think that's going to hurt him at the next level. I really think he struggles to redirect, and I think that he gives up too much ground going backwards. I think that I saw him get bull rushed too often for my liking. I actually think he did show good power going forward, but he just caught too much, and it made me question his strength about getting bull rushed. But I did have it noted that I thought that he had good punch timing. I thought he had good hand placement. I don't know. It's just
Absolutely.
I really worry about guys that allow defenders to cross their face. I just don't see that being a good sign early on or in the college career, and how that's going to improve at the next level.
I hear you. I definitely know what you mean. I did see some of that on tape from this year. Keep in mind that he did miss some time with a knee injury and also had a shoulder injury, so those could be a bit limiting. If you go back and look at his 2013 film, you definitely see him anchoring better and definitely cutting off the inside and redirecting better. So those are also things that to really take into account.
No, that's fair, and I haven't done that, so I'm going to have to do that. The one tackle that we haven't talked about that's my favorite is probably Darrell Williams out of Oklahoma.
Mhm.
I think we talked about a way he not being a dog. That's exactly what Williams is. He's a dog. He's a finisher. He's going to put you in the ground. I mean, we know we talk about efficiency. I think efficiency is a good way to describe him because I mean it's not pretty. You know, guys might get him to the edge late, but at the end of the day, the quarterback's standing up, and you know that you're going to get a mauler on the run game. So
Yeah.
I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be as productive as a high second rounder. I just think he's going to be really good right tackle in the NFL.
I agree with you. For things that he lacks as far as technical savvy and even a little fleet-footedness, and he makes up because he is a dog. I mean, he's a guy that really does battle in there. I think he does need to improve on his conditioning. Sometimes he really goes from 100 to 0 real fast, where he kind of loses it. But definitely, I think he has the potential to be a very good right tackle.
So real quick before we get out of here, let's do a couple things. Tell me the best zone blocking, the top two zone blocking. Let's go three. Top three zone blocking tackles.
Offensive tackles, top three zone blockers. I say Humphreys is probably number one. I think Collins can do both, be in the power or zone blocking. Fisher, of course, we know can zone block. And then also Clemmings, very good zone blocker.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you said that about about Collins, because I've seen people question his ability to fit in his zone blocking scheme.
I know.
I think his feet are just way too good. Like he can just get to spots.
And that's the thing.
And a lot of like zone blocking isn't always like stretch zones where you have like a lot of it's inside zone, and that's like the majority of runs. Like for instance, the Chargers run a ton of inside zone, and I mean it's a lot of man principles anyway. So I don't know.
I agree. I agree 100%. And you've hit the nail on the head. It's important to look at if a guy can fit in the zone blocking scheme is really his targeting and landmarks. Is he able to open his hips and reach guys? Is he able to cut guys off? What's his angles? Climbing to the next level. Does he understand that? And the answer is yes, he could do it. I think a lot of times, and especially I see this all the time, if you see a physical guy that gets moving on a deuce block or gets movement, base block is like, oh, he's a power guy. Nah. I mean, first of all, if I got a guy who's just one or another and I got a chance of getting a guy that can do both, I'm going to take the guy that can do both, first of all. I mean, because with the exception of maybe like 3 to 4 teams, all NFL teams run concepts of zone and power. I mean, fact of the matter. Now, depending on if they run an outside zone where they're reaching and running or ripping and running, that's a little different. I mean, there's about 4 teams in the league that do that. But, I think that's kind of – let's debunk that myth right now that the guys are XYZ is a power-only guy because of his strength at the point of attack and yada, yada, yada. No. Look at his landmarks. Look at how does he understand angles. Look at can he open his hips and get to a spot if the answer is yes, he can definitely be zone blocking already.
I agree. No, I really agree with that. So, speaking of power, man blocking, gap scheme, who are the top 3 tackles in that regard?
Top 3 tackles, definitely Lyle is definitely, I think, the top as far as man scheme, blocking tackles. I also like Pete as well, coming down, on a deuce, base block. Mitch Morrissey, another guy that I like, definitely be a power or even zone because of his ability to understand angles.
I'm gonna have to watch him because I've never watched him.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. And not to skip back, but we mentioned him earlier, so I kind of left him out. But Havenstein, as far as zone blocking tackles, I mean the guy gets it again, like we said. But yeah, definitely. So I like again Collins. I even think based upon the physicality and some of the pad level and coming downhill and being able to square up, Jake Fisher could definitely play in a power scheme. I could see him deuce blocking and down blocking and stepping and hinging into some things. He gets movement at the point of attack.
To do it.
Yep.
Okay, let's make some bold predictions here. Tell me who is a tackle that everybody's high on that won't be as good in the NFL. Like, who's a guy that we're like that you might miss on, that I might miss on? Like, go ahead.
You know what? It really could be Ogilvy. I mean, he's a guy that I think everybody likes things about him, but we just don't know, man. Granted, it's still early, but some of the tackles that have come out of A&M the past couple of years, we just
Bueno.
Yeah, we're waiting on him. We expect a lot more. The same can be said by a lot of these guys. Will TJ Clemens, will a light go on, and will he really put it all together? I don't know. You just don't know. You don't know. It's tough to make that bold prediction. There's so many factors that go into it. Where a guy ends up, what his coaching is like as far as developmental. Some coaches in the NFL will coach only schematic wise, and within that, there's not really much technical and development work that goes into it. And there's some guys that we've talked about earlier in the podcast that can really benefit from developmental work, and it's kind of going to be a catalyst to where they end up as a player. So.
I agree. I'm going to say the number 1 tackle in the draft, or I guess not the number 1, but the guy who's going to go the highest. I'm worried that everything that I'm seeing with Pete is going to come to fruition. I'm worried that he won't be able to absorb, or he won't be able to cut off the guys at the next level. He more than likely will, but I can see it not happening, and I can see Pete kind of flailing out. But he has all the talent in the world, and there are good offensive line coaches in the NFL. So I don't know. That kind of saves my ass, but I really do think there's a possibility of him not being as well or playing as well as we think. So who's the guy that, are you going to say the Missouri kid? Who's a guy that maybe could be a Pro Bowler that nobody thinks will be?
Ooh, I don't even like to bring out the Pro Bowl tag, but a guy that I think may eventually play well and really come out firing. There's 2 guys. Rob Chris from North Carolina State, guy really not getting talked about much, but you turn on the tape. He's a really good player. Really good player. He does have some issues, but when you just look at his base that he plays with, physicality, his length, able to kick to a spot, has some success against Beasley, man. I tell you, he did have his edge challenge a few times with Beasley. But he's a guy that, again, right place, right time, may be a really good player. Also, Mitch Morrissey, again, a guy I really like. I like Morrissey. He may not get drafted terribly high, but he's a guy that I think may be able to plug and play. And you know, who knows? I think he'll be a good player though.
And before we get out of here, it's a Chargers podcast, so I got to ask you about their 2 young offensive linemen. Tell me, what do you think about Chris Watt's future? Because I remember asking you.
Absolutely.
If you saw him against Baltimore, and against Baltimore, if you didn't know any better, he went against Nada, he went against Jernigan, he went against all the linemen, and he put on a show. If you didn't know any better, you thought he was a Pro Bowler. So tell me what you think about Chris Watt. And it seems like his future, they're going to keep him at center, even though maybe I think he should be a guard. But go ahead, talk to me.
You know what? I think that he can be a very solid center. I think he's showed a little bit about that. But I like him at guard. I think at guard, it's his natural position. Some of the things he did as far as in the run game, you know, being able to get movement, really create push. You know, he worked really well on the combos. And some of the things that I really liked about him is his ability to redirect and really mirror and keep a tight phone booth and pass protection. Those are things that I really highlighted about him when he was at Notre Dame and he came in and when it was his time to step up and play. I mean, he played really well. I pay attention to the Ravens a lot. I'm a Ravens fan, really, and he definitely played a very good game against the Ravens, and that's not easy to do. I've seen the Ravens front tear guys apart. I've been around Terrell Suggs, and I know, you know, he kind of say, you know, they don't send me to the inside much. He goes, but I'm trying to ear hole guys when I do get down there. So that mindset is throughout that whole defensive line. They've got a bunch of dogs on that D line, and it's not an easy thing to do to play against them.
I bet. And then the last one, DJ Fluker. What do you think about Fluker, and how do you think he projects as an offensive guard?
I said it coming out that I thought DJ Fluker could be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type guard. I just thought, you know, again, he's a guy that when he won in college, he won by jump setting, being aggressive with his sets, and things of that nature. I've had some people to say that no, that he may have issues even at guard with pass pro, but I think that he covers enough width and space that you know, with his physicality, with his arm length, he definitely has fast twitch. I think he's going to be a very good guard if they move him down into the inside. You know, DJ Fluker is a guy who is a classic guy that just goes out there with that competitive edge and mindset and attitude. And I've seen things on him this offseason. He looks very good as far as that he's in shape.
That's great to hear, man. No, I want to thank you a lot for coming on here, man. Really informative stuff. I know listeners are going to learn a lot. I know I learned a lot. Oh boy, I'm rooting for that Clemmings Fluker right side next year, man.
Ooh,
yeah,
you and a lot of people are rooting for that Clemens.
Yeah, man. But no, I can get you out of here. Again, thanks for doing this.
No problem, man.
You guys can follow Duke at Big Duke 50 on Twitter. Hit him up, follow him for all the offensive lineman vines, and you know, just learning about the position itself. Didn't have time to talk about guards or centers, but maybe I'll bring you back on if the Chargers do decide to go in that direction, but I'm pretty confident they're going to go in the tackle direction. But anything else you want to say before you get out of here, man?
No, man. Thanks for having me, and we'll have a clear picture of how everything shapes up in about a week, right?
Yeah, can't wait,
Absolutely.
man. So we're almost there.
All righty.
All right, man. Well,
anytime.
Thanks for joining me, man. You have a good weekend.
You as well.